So we've now seen in our previous video how we can name a single cell using our name box. There are, however, several ways we can create name ranges. So we are going to look at creating name ranges now in a bit more detail. We've been asked to generate some stats from our database. This will be much easier for us if we can name each of the columns. So let's start with our employee ID. So I'm going to go on A4, and then a good shortcut key is Control-Shift-Arrow down to select all the data till you hit a blank cell. Now, let's recap on name box. We're going to click into the name box and type emp ID. Emp ID for employee ID, and then press enter. And we've now named that entire range. So that was the first method. But as promised, there are other methods that we can use. So if you come to the Formulas tab on your ribbon, you will notice defined name groups. These are all the tools for working with name ranges, and you can see there are actually quite a few. Now, the next tool we are going to look at is define name. So this tool allows us to define a name, and it has some advantages over the name box. So let's do the pension column this time. So I'm going to go to O4, and note I'm not including my heading. It's not actually part of the data. So with the name box and define name, we do not click on the headings. Now, once again, Control-Shift-Arrow down, come to define name, and it has opened a dialog box, and even work out from the label that I probably want to call my range, which is the pension. So that's already great. I can also adjust the range if I need to, but both of those are kind of nice to haves. So the important thing is the second one, the scope. The scope defines where this name range can be seen. So by default, it can be seen through the entire workbook, which is great because I can refer to it even if I'm on the stats sheet. If, however, I wanted to duplicate my sheets, I'm not allowed to have duplicate name range. So I could choose to change my scope to only be, for example, in that staff sheet. That means I can have something called pension in staff and something called pension in stats. So if you need to change your scope, it is important you do it up front, as this cannot be changed later. And that's why we use the define name. We don't actually want to change our scope, and we probably won't use this option very often. So at least you know where it is. So we are going to say, okay, now. The last option is my favorite. I'm looking at this data and I'm thinking still 13 columns to name. So much for efficiency. Well, I wouldn't lie to you. Excel gives us a fabulous tool. It's called Create from Selection. This allows us to name multiple ranges simultaneously using the labels already in the workbook. So I'm going to name each of the columns using the column headings. It's too easy. So let's start by selecting our data. So we select all of our data. Now I've already done something different. This time I have included the headings. We only do this with Create from Selection, and that's because it needs the headings to work out what to call the ranges. So now I come up to Create from Selection. This one. I'm going to hover for a moment So you can see the shortcut key. So we use Control Shift F3. So for create from selection, and now it's asking if I want to name each of the columns using the label in the top row or each of the rows using the label in the left column. I don't want to label my rows, so I'm going to untick that and click on OK. So let's go on and check our name box. There, see? And if I check it out, so I'll just click on my annual salary. You can see it has named the entire range. So to recap, we've looked at the 3 ways of creating name ranges: the name box, define name, and create from selection. Just remember, we only select headings if we're using create from selection.